Joining me now is the mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms. Mayor Bottoms, thank you so much for being with us. This is a milestone day in your state. I want to get to that in just a moment. But first, I assume you heard what the president said about disinfectants and musing about whether or not they could be injected into the body. What do you want the people of Atlanta to know about that?
You know, John, in addition to advising people to please stay home, now I have to add to that list and don't inject your body with Lysol. I mean, it's like we're living in the twilight zone. We have public health officials, we have scientists, we have experts who are saying this is important in order for us to get through this pandemic and to get to the other side of this crisis. We have to socially distance. And in a normal world, we'd be able to look to our president and to the White House and receive sound guidance and advice. But instead, we're now having to tell people not to ingest and inject your body with household cleaners. These are strange times that we're living in. And I just hope that people will exercise common sense. But we have to be careful what we put out to the public, because there's so many people who don't understand what the science is.
What do you expect to happen in Atlanta today? Obviously, in Georgia, the governor has decreed that several different types of businesses can open: hair and nail salons, massage parlors, tattoo parlors, barbershops. What do you expect to see today?
John, what I expect to see is that there are some people who simply will not listen, that they will go into hair salons and go and get manicures and pedicures as if it's business as usual. And then what I expect is that in a couple of weeks, we will see our numbers continue to rise in this state. To the extent that we've had any relief in this state, it's because in Atlanta and other metropolitan areas in the city, we have been very aggressive about closing down businesses, putting in stay-at-home orders, and it's helped lower our numbers, but we are not out of the woods. We have expanded hospital capacity in this state and in our city, but it doesn't mean that we need to work to fill up those beds. Those are there in case we need them, not for the sake of reopening the economy.
So the governor says people can go to these institutions. What are you telling people in your city about whether they should?
Very simply, stay home. Nothing has changed. People are still getting infected. People are still dying. We don't have a cure to this virus. The only thing that's helped us is that we have stayed apart from one another. And I'm simply asking people to continue to do that. I think as leaders, we have to make it easier for people to stay home. We've got to get money into the pockets of people who are concerned about putting food on their tables and paying their rent. That's where we should be putting our energy.
Now, I know it's not an abstraction for you, right? Your mother owned an hair salon for what, 24 years?
She did, and I shampooed hair in that salon many a day, and not once was I able to do it from 6 feet. And in talking to my mother said there's no way in the world I would go and stand over a customer right now. But I also recognize this would have been devastating for my mother financially. It would have been devastating for our family. But my mother would also say to me, you got to live to fight another day. And so I recognize that people are hurting financially, but it's not worth putting your life and the lives of your children and your family at risk.
So how and when, though, can these businesses or any businesses start to reopen? You know there's an appetite, and you know people are hurting, and you know eventually things will start to open up. So what's the right way to do it, and when?
John, I think that we have to be responsible. In Atlanta, we have a committee in place who is going to advise us. The metropolitan Atlanta area is home to 26 Fortune 500 companies. We have representatives from those companies on this advisory committee. We have public health officials on this advisory committee, small business owners. We will look to the professionals to tell us how to responsibly reopen. Now, I understand, this needs to be a phased approach. Elective surgeries, people who understand how to use PPE and even have access to PPE, sure, perhaps we can begin to open up those businesses. But I'm competing on the open marketplace as a mayor to get PPE for my sanitation workers. How can I expect that my hairstylist will also be able to access PPE and then have all of the information she needs to put it on when we have healthcare professionals who are struggling with this.
Mayor, I want to give you a chance to respond to something that frankly is vile, which is an awful text message you received where you were, I believe, in the presence of one of your children, and one of your other children actually received the same hate-filled text message. What's going on here?
You know, John, what I see is racism in 2020, and that's why I put that text message out, because I want people to understand what it means when you have our highest leaders speaking in xenophobic terms. This is a byproduct of that. People feel empowered to speak hate, and it saddened me. It was a teachable moment in my household. To have this conversation about race with my children. And I was very surprised to even see my high school senior tell my sixth grader he's been called the N-word more times than he can count. It's 2020, and there's still so much work that has to be done in America. And, you know, I hope this sparks a conversation. But what I see, the larger picture here, I'm continuing to get messages, and there are other people getting messages. There's someone or some entity that's attempting to make this pandemic about something other than what it is. It's a global health crisis that's impacting all of us. There's no regard to color.
That's right.
There's no regard to economic status. This is something that's impacting all of us.
Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, thank you for being with us this morning. We appreciate your time. We're sorry you're receiving those messages.